Hi, and welcome back to the AIDC debate. We're very excited that you're joining us. We have been off the air for a couple of weeks because we were traveling and also because we were working on this insane data center investment forecast update, which will be the focus of our show today. As always, I'm joining you from London. Shen is in Shanghai. Manoj is in South India. So as a result, you are teleported simultaneously to three places. All right, lads, before we go into the data center investment discussion, there's been so much action in our group chat that I think it's a good idea to bring the action to our listeners. Several really big news items. So let's choose the biggest items for us to discuss. This morning, we woke up to the news that CoolIT is going for sale. I already put out a post about my speculations of who's going to buy it, but I'm very curious. What are your initial thoughts? And what do you think about this $3 billion valuation?
It actually proves one of our speculation in the past is that in this year, in 2026, will be the year of consolidation for liquid cooling markets. You'll be seeing company buying companies like Trend just bought Liquid Stack maybe a couple of days ago, and I've been thinking all the time. So who would be the next target? If you are an electrical company and you are looking for a quick access to the liquid cooling market, the best way is to buy a company. And actually, to be honest, there's so much of good targets in the market for you to buy. Most of them do have a big owner in the back. I think QIT has been the leader for a long, long time. So it's definitely the greatest opportunity of this year for a company to enter liquid cooling market. So you want to name some company who might buy this?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we've seen some of the other electrical companies already acquire cooling companies. We've seen Schneider and Vertiv acquire that capability. As a result, they've actually done pretty well. I think that the whole diversification has helped them to sell the whole reference design of a data center. They called it the chip to chiller type of reference designs. It seems like that's translating to people. When we were with Schneider in Copenhagen, I was very surprised how many companies would actually go and look and listen to the reference design pitches. And then afterwards, we got confirmation that people like that they like that they can have a one throat to choke approach when it comes to their data center. And I think that's helpful. I think that clearly there's two electrical companies when I analyze their portfolio and their revenue stream right now where they are the least differentiated, and that's Siemens and ABB. And I think you probably agree with me, Shen.
I totally agree because there's no other people left. If you think about who might be able to spend that money and who might be ambitious to get into the market, Schneider has already Motive Air and Legrand and Johnson Control has somebody, Trend has somebody, and Vertiv has already get into this market a long time ago. There's actually no companies left who have the ambition and the capability to complete such a very big deal.
What about Eaton?
Eaton has already bought it.
Yeah, that's true. Oh yeah, of course. Eaton just bought Boyd. Yeah, exactly. So it really
How
doesn't. It
about
doesn't.
Legrand?
Legrand has
Legrand,
invested in Excelsius.
That's actually two-phase cooling, right? They don't have the kind of
they do.
solution.
They bought a small company in the UK called U Systems
Yeah.
that used to make HPC single phase cooling. They started in rear door heat exchangers, but the kind of CDUs that they have could be repurposed pretty easily for direct to chip. So technically it could be Legrand as well. It is
Yeah.
possible that they do have more capability than Siemens and ABB in terms of their existing portfolio of companies and investments.
Why should someone buy a liquid cooling company? It's not really complicated technology if you look at it, right? So is it for the supply chain? Is it for the customers? Or is it for the technology itself?
For me, I'll tell you my take. I think that the reason why you would buy specifically CoolIT is they are so close to the IT OEMs. And they actually use the IT OEMs as a distribution channel. So I think that they're very unique in this. I think because they were very early with the liquid cooling technology and people, I guess they needed help convincing, they ended up developing this partner channel. So I think that's probably their strength. I think that's what you're paying for when you're paying the $3 billion. I think their revenue is comparatively low, still in the hundreds of millions. So as a result, the multiplier is very high. So I guess what you're paying for is that established channel. So if you wanted to scale, you could. And then potentially you could also use this partner channel to sell other stuff if you're Siemens and ABB, which kind of helps.
Yeah, totally I
Interesting.
agree. And I think influence and sales channel, that's an existing relationship with several OEMs, with end users, and with all kind NVIDIA, for example, are the key. And another story is that QIT is one of the group. So they are very rare company. They are the all-around liquid cooling company. So nowadays, the liquid cooling market is quite divided. You either make CDU or cold plate. For companies who make CDUs, they don't want to get into the cold plate because that's the server business. And for people who makes cold plates, they more work with the server vendors rather than the facility people. CoolIT is one of the few companies that can make all-around solutions. They make pretty good CDUs, and it's very good selling. And also they make like very, very nice, very cool cold plates in the mean at the same time. That's very rare.
And
That
there is
means,
there is power in the learning curve, right? Because they would
yeah,
have tried things and they would have failed in some places and then managed to figure out what design works well. So I think that maybe Manoj, what they're buying is pace, that very quick learning curve that they don't have to have.
QWERTY is early starter, so they have a lot of patents and knowledge. They publish a lot of papers, and they know exactly how to control the fluid better. Because making a CD or cold plate is easy, but the know-how behind it is quite difficult. And they happen to have a lot of those experiences and knowledges on that. That's very, very precious assets in my eyes.
So it will be
So,
very interesting.
what are the chances that an OEM will buy it? For example, I think CoolIT, when I visited Dell,
I mean, like
I
Dell.
saw I saw that they are using a lot of like CoolIT liquid cooling system. So why not a company like Dell buy CoolIT? Because it's all about like liquid cooling. When I say cold plates and CDUs, right? Not really chillers and the rest of the liquid cooling where other companies specialize. So it could be a natural fit for a company like Dell. Means I'm just
Well, they already have the partnership, so I'm not sure what they get if they buy it, to be honest. I guess maybe in my head there is a benefit for an OEM to be able to say I work with every liquid cooling company. I guess there is also a benefit to say you don't have to go elsewhere. We have a fully integrated solution. So I am not a huge fan of the putting all your eggs in one basket and having a single vendor in general. So maybe I'm skeptical because of my personality, but there certainly are. I can see some benefits.
the server, they have to work with the server vendors because cold plates sit inside a server, right, and on a chip. So obviously you need to work with the server vendors for the mechanical design and also maybe the thermal simulation and stuff like that. So there needs to be a very close partnership with the OEMs. So I'm
They have been very close
this is
already.
this is just a wild guess. I think that maybe Dell is likely to buy than a traditional liquid cooling company. Yeah, let's see.
Yeah. So actually, I'm thinking, if you look at those server OEMs who makes their own liquid cooling stuff, they usually can sell cold plate pretty well, but they can't sell the CDU well. But the CDU belongs to the facility world, which is not part of the IT world. And if you look at the companies that we know of, for example, EIT systems make their own cold plates and CDUs, but they are mostly selling cold plates, not CDUs. For example, Huawei are selling a lot of cold plates on their own servers, but their CDU are not so popular like others because it's hard for them getting into the physical world, the physical markets. And for Dell, if they buy QIT, I think it makes sense if you buy the cold plate part of QIT, but if they also buy the CDU part of the QIT, that means they have to make a role transition from a IT vendor to a facility vendor. That is
It's
hard
actually
for.
naturally happening anyway, right? Because now earlier Dell is not just a server vendor; they actually ship rack these days, and a few bunch of racks, and the racks they ship it has to have some liquid cooling mechanisms, and
That's IT.
some of them will have in rack CDU. So there is a big integration which is happening at the equipment level as well, and also I think the amount of optimizations that you can do with a row of rack when you are actually the supplier of all the racks, all the IT gear, you have the liberty to optimize the cooling that in row CDU than a third party vendor who is supplying a CDU for you. So when you are moving in the direction of AI factories, I think liquid cooling is very much like a part of an IT system. How maybe heat sinks and fan were in an integral part of the IT system. I think that it is just a matter of time that like liquid cooling. I think it's already we are there, right? Liquid cooling is also part of the IT system. And if you look at companies like Cerebras, right? They have liquid cooling and they build systems and all the cooling technology they build in. So yeah.
I think Manoj, maybe I think the challenge is this cultural split. The cultural split of the IT and OT people is very strong. It has to be said, Shen and I have seen it. And I think you were with us when we went to one of the data centers where we saw a bundle be sold in a retrofit. And the bundle includes busway, it includes the racks, it includes the CDU, it includes the rack PDUs. That's the bundle that Legrand sold to Equinix when we saw their retrofit. So I agree that there is a lot of optimizations that you can do at the IT level, and it's very important, and that could be a competitive advantage. Similarly, you have an opportunity to bundle and to offer entire reference designs if you already sell electrical. And there are also quite a lot of potential bundle differentiators within the broader cooling sphere. Like Shen and I did a study on the thermal energy storage, and being able to, for example, bundle a phase change thermal energy storage with CDU could be a real competitive advantage to someone. So I think that it certainly Dell is a real opportunity. I think Siemens, ABB, and Dell are probably the three most likely parties. And Dell would have been my third if I was to make a list of three.
So
Yeah.
basically
Also,
sorry, go ahead.
sorry, I would just want to mention that because if you are selling both server and CDUs, that means it's highly likely that you compete with your customer, or because, for example, CoolIT has been selling CDUs for many kinds of servers. But what if you only only optimize your CDU with Dell servers, and that means you will lose markets from HP, from the ODMs, or many other non-Dell servers, and that is a risk for them. And that's part of the reason why the current server OEMs who makes CDUs does not get a very good sales, because in most of the data centers, if they don't have their own servers, and why would they take that deal? Why would they consider the real facility vendors like Schneider or Vertiv? So
Yeah, the way I look at it is like, see, if you look at who's driving all this technology trends in the market right now, it's a silicon vendor, Nvidia. They are defining what is the cooling technology, they are defining what is the power distribution. These are like all physical infrastructure related stuff. But a vendor like an Nvidia can go to the extent that they have to define this, because they know what exactly is required at the silicon level, and what are actually the areas to optimize for it. When a silicon company can actually go to the extent of defining the power architecture of a data center, why not a system company like Dell can go ahead and have integrated cooling systems highly optimized for the server configurations and although the rack configurations. I think it is possible. Yeah,
It is
I don't
possible.
want to drag this further. Yeah.
No, Dell's share is enough in the market that even if they were not able to sell a studio to anyone else, that they would have enough of a market. So certainly it is possible. So very interesting. Let's move on to other news. So huge news was a few days ago from the Stargate project, when we heard that Oracle is canceling or pulling back a little bit from some of the builds in Abilene.
OpenAI.
Well, Oracle and OpenAI together, I guess. So, Manoj, why don't you do a little run of the news, what happened, and then what's your take?
Yeah, basically the news is that OpenAI is I would say pausing some of the capacity they are building in Abilene, Texas, as part of the Stargate project. So right now the situation is that there are 8 buildings which is being built, and out of the 8, already 2 are built and powered. And I think Oracle is expanding the facility in these 2 buildings, and OpenAI is the main tenant. And Oracle is negotiating with OpenAI for the next 6, and that is where OpenAI said, like, let's pause. I think the reason for the pause, at least as highlighted in some of the news article, is that this is a facility they are building primarily for the Blackwell generation of GPUs. And at this point, OpenAI would like to augment their capacity more towards Rubin later this year and next year. So that is one of the reasons they are pausing. And also, it is worth to note that not all the 8 buildings are powered right now. Only 2 buildings are powered. Building the power capacity for the rest of the 6 will definitely take over a year. And that is actually the time frame where Rubin will be the leading GPU generation, right? So OpenAI wants to deploy Rubin, probably Rubin Ultra, which requires a complete uh, data center change, maybe with the 800-volt DC distribution and all the crazy amount of rack power density and cooling requirements. It might require a different kind of like data center than what they were planning to build. That is possible. I don't know, but I clearly believe that it is just a pause that very similar to what Microsoft did in the beginning of 25. I don't
And
think
still
that
had
this
record capex at the time.
absolutely. So I don't think that this is gonna impact any of the capex plans of any of the companies. And the news also says that Meta is already in discussion with the developer Crusoe to take the facility which is available. So yeah, I don't see it as a really bad news. It could be some priority changes for the companies on what kind of silicon they should use and what is their future capacity coming from. So yeah,
And we talked
that's
about
it.
it that there could be another deal that OpenAI has not fully announced that is impacting that decision, and we're just not aware of it yet. I did hear something kind of interesting um, when Manoj and I first discussed this, and I said, well, maybe OpenAI is kind of shifting its priorities and they will invest somewhere else. He said, where else can you get power? Well, I did have a bit of tidbits as to kind of some of the changes that we're seeing. If we think about, I had a chance to meet with a few representatives of the Irish government at MWC. Actually, that was one of the things that I was my takeaway is a lot of ambition is there, and there's a lot of and they're lifting the memorandum on builds. They're gonna kind of encourage new builds, and actually, the more people from more governments that I ended up meeting, I just saw more and more ambition. So I do think that there's probably going to be some push for some of the inference that OpenAI does to be kind of brought into new hubs. But I do agree with you that probably the training will remain in the US. And I think that there is a lot of power in Texas. And that's why we're seeing it become such a big hub.
There is a lot more drama happening outside of like this data center spot, which is actually between the Department of Defense, Anthropic, and OpenAI being a party to it. So that actually created a lot of backlash for OpenAI, at least from the retail users. The uninstall of OpenAI's ChatGPT software on iPhones and Android were record high, and the app installations, app downloads of Claude, the Anthropic version of it, it's actually skyrocketing. So
Mm.
because of the firm stand Dario has taken in the case with the Department of War, people are actually favoring Anthropic and ditching OpenAI ChatGPT. So that could also be a challenge, but I'm saying that like it may not be that big of a challenge. It could be a temporary situation, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Never underestimate the culture wars. So
exactly.
let's just take a little sidebar. So you have been testing the fanciest cloud model for a while. What's your impressions?
It's amazing. I am a big fan of Claude, especially the latest Opus. It's incredible. I save a ton of my time using it, finding stuff. It can actually fetch all the SEC filings to create awesome summary reports. It makes my work a lot more productive. It's like I'm a big fan of Claude.
So you think it's worth it? Because it costs a little bit, right? Because it's the most advanced model.
Absolutely. I love it.
But there you go. That's Manoj stamp of approval. All right. So last news item before we go into our data center investment discussion. So another kind of big thing that hit the AIDC debate group chat, and honestly, it was the talk of the family for me in my household this weekend, is Cortical Labs. So Manoj, I'll just ask you very quickly to give us a download of what did that Australian company do and why it's cool.
Yeah, it's a pretty amazing stuff. Like, so we have heard of this phrase called bio-inspired computing when we were talking about like various other computing paradigms beyond GPUs and ASICs and stuff like that, neuromorphic computing and all those jazz. But this
And
thing
in
is
general, how we
literally
build neural nets has been always inspired by, they've tried to inspire neural nets by the human
exactly,
brain.
but it's
But
all
this
like
is different.
semiconductor, right?
Yeah.
But this
Yes.
Cortical Labs CL1 it's not just bio-inspired computing, it's like a biological computer. It has got around 200,000 real human neurons. It looks like it's some gel in a a glass bowl, and it is connected via a silicon chip, and it actually communicates with the chip back and forth to the chip and these neurons via electrical signals. And these guys have actually created a Python API so that we can actually program these neurons. This is insane, man.
That's insane.
It's like these are neurons which is grown from stem cells. So it is possible that it is possible to replicate Vlad or Manoj or Shen in a lab, taking our stem cells and building neurons out of it, and then programming it to do various things. And the CLI's video, they have released a YouTube video. They're using that computer, basically the neurons, to play a game, Doom, which is a pretty old fighting game. But it actually plays, man. It's like it's actually taking decisions. It is responding to the environment, and it's like crazy. So I don't know, means where the world is actually going. It is
Shen,
possible
did
that
you
you
see the
can have.
video?
No, I'm shocked. I need to find the
Yeah,
video.
you need to see the video. It is pretty incredible. Watching the brain cells play Doom, and they're a
Yeah,
clear container of liquid is the craziest thing I have ever seen.
What?
yeah,
Yeah, it's
it
That's
is.
amazing. It's
crazy.
truly amazing.
This is the real biological computer.
So, Manoj, do you know what's the first question that our producer of the podcast asked when I showed him the video?
Uh-huh.
What happens when the brain cells decide not to play Doom, but to do something else?
Yeah, it is. You can actually control it and program it, right? So, like the way you stimulate your brain, there are various stimulation, and maybe the electrical stimuli goes wrong and do something else. Yeah, it can get wild as
I
anyone
think
else.
clearly one of the things that we've been discussing for a long time is how little energy the brain needs compared to a computer. So certainly this type of research, if we talk about the potential benefits to humanity, it is being able to actually use a lot less power for computing. I think that there is a lot of promise in that.
Yeah, a full rack of this CL1 systems draw less than 1 kilowatt of power. A full rack.
Mhm.
It's
Oh, wait, they call it a
awesome.
rack of these systems?
Yeah, they have.
Oh, but okay. I didn't know they call it a rack.
Yeah, it's like the second generation of Yosemite servers, the sleds, the
I see.
CL1 sleds, but it's much more like it's white color, looks more plasticky with a glass lid to open and change the neuron, the neuron tub, I would say, or
That's
the
pretty
chip.
amazing.
And
If we
yeah,
were to get
it's pretty interesting.
if we were to get a guest in this podcast, that is the guest that I'd like to have personally.
Yeah, we have seen this in sci-fi movies, right?
Exactly.
People are
Yeah.
inserted into some glass tube, and then they're they're being planted with stuff and all that. So it is maybe in the future it is possible to take these train neurons and put it in somebody else's brain, and man, the world will
Or
I
be
just
mean,
like
that's
completely
why my
different.
response to you when you sent it to me, the first one was like sci-fi. That is exactly the
Yeah,
first thing that crossed my mind.
exactly. It is really out of
exactly.
a sci-fi movie.
Shen, would you use a computer from brain cells? Shen's like, absolutely. Give me
It's
one
pretty
tomorrow.
scary. I'm thinking about what's the movie that's the guy's wearing black clothes.
Terminator?
Not Vi-
Matrix?
not Matrix. Yes, that is exactly. So in the future, maybe people are seen as racks. Like we stand in a row and as racks, and they give us a dream, and they use our neurons to make computing.
Maybe.
That's
Very,
scary.
very interesting. But so that's that the company is Cortical Labs and we'll be monitoring it very closely. It's very, very interesting. So let's
So
talk about
imagine a Tesla bot which has got a real neuron, and it's yeah, you're disappointed with my choice of selection of the vendor, but maybe take it as unitary robot, humanoid robot, coming up with this kind of computing in its brain rather than the Jetson Nano or Jetson or in which right now is being used.
I just hope someone like the Danish government please buy Cortical Labs before Elon Musk. I trust you more than him. That will be really nice. Okay, so we've talked enough about news. Let's talk about data center investment. So we were off air for a couple of weeks while we were doing this. In reality, it's been a very exciting time. What triggered our revision is we saw a whole bunch of capex data center investment intent changing. So a lot of the largest data center investors actually said that they will raise their capex dramatically. Google, um, AWS both announced $200 billion worth of capex for the full year. Not all of this is data center. So, we spent some time to understand what portion it is. We ended up finding some very interesting tidbits while we were doing this. For example, one of the things that Manoj and I could not reconcile after days and days and days of staring and looking at supply chain is what is Google spending these over 100 billion now, because in a supply constrained environment we did not believe they could potentially get more TPUs, and we already had 3 million units baked into our forecast. So our natural conclusion was that they will spend tens of billions of dollars on NVIDIA systems. That is the first time we've seen such a big investment from Google. We tried to confirm it with NVIDIA, but unfortunately, it was in the quiet period. So we weren't able to confirm it. It will be a big discussion topic for us in GTC. But it was a very exciting, I would say, cycle of updates. So let's have a little bit of a chat around some of the drivers of growth that we saw, and then some of the risks that we see. In terms of the top line numbers, we raised our 2030 expectation for data center investment from 1.6 trillion to 1.9 trillion. I will remind you that I was pushing for us to go to 2 trillion a year ago almost, and you were apprehensive, and now we're almost there. We've seen a lot of things happen. I think one of the big conversations in terms of drivers for growth was demand. It does still look like demand is strong. Um, AI services keep on broadening. There's new use cases, and it seems like people are making real money from it. So I guess let's talk about this for a second. Um, Manoj, do you want to do a quick recap on some of the monetization that we saw of AI services like Anthropic, Claude, and ChatGPT and Copilot?
Yeah, sure. I think like everyone is having amazing revenue growth. Anthropic clocked around 14 billion last year, and they are expecting it to hit close to 100 billion this year. Even though there is a lot of like drama with the Department of War and related to aspect, I believe that their product is pretty good, and it is being used by a lot of enterprise customers, and the enterprise spending on AI is going up significantly. So that means that there'll be much more revenue potential for these companies and services. A lot of these enterprise projects, which was in the pilot stage in 25, is getting into production, and that is likely to create significant demand for all these generative AI tools through their APIs. And even though there are a lot of open source models available, most of the enterprises are actually opting for these closed source models because of the capability they have, the guardrails and the security and stuff like that, which is a concern for open source models. So I believe that there will be pretty strong growth across the spectrum for closed source as well as open source models. And the big capital expenditure from all of the hyperscalers really point to they're expecting that growth as well.
One of the things that we saw when you and I were looking at the Anthropic growth is that communication they made that many companies are spending over $1 million. Well, over the last month, we've been working on a survey. Omdia is going to launch it together with one of its partners. But one of the things that I found very interesting is I wanted to try to confirm this $1 million. Is it really true that so many companies are doing it? So as a result, I ended up designing the survey in a way where it's like the screener is so long so that I really only talk with companies that are actively buying AI, but also, they are your average enterprise. And it was very surprising. A very large portion were intending to spend over $1 million and to actually have that grow over time. And as we were looking at the survey results and at Anthropic, there was actually one of our friends in the research in the research community from semi-analysis who also said, look, I will spend whatever it takes on AI because it's the best tool I've ever seen. This is very similar to what we heard from Mr. Wonderful when he was at the stage of Data Center World last year. So it does certainly look like the intent of spend is there, but also the tools, the gamma of tools is changing. And one of the coolest tools that we've heard about is OpenClaw. So, Shen, can you walk us through first what is your experience of what you've seen with OpenClaw? And maybe just start by quickly recapping what is it? Because I think we've seen it in the news, but it's possible some of our listeners are not familiar with OpenClaw.
Okay, sure. So OpenClaw is like a small model. You can deploy it on your own computer. Remember, a couple of days ago, the Mac Mini was really in demand and was
Yeah.
short actually. That is because it can be well deployed on Mac Mini. So this is a small model. It can be deployed locally and it is open source. That's the most important thing. It's open source. It's not like a Microsoft Copilot, which is proprietary. So open source meaning that you can um, adjust the code to your own needs and you can make it cross-platform. So that's not only like help you with your Microsoft applications, but it also can help you to reply on Gmails, can help you to using your reply with your WeChats, your WhatsApp, etc. So it's open source, free of charge, and cross-platform. That is most important. And different from other normal models that we use every day, this one is like a real assistant. It's like a real human being. It bridges you between you and the models. So it's not only help you to give you an answer, it's help you to execute the actions. So it's just a funny tool. But the thing is, why it makes such a big change to the AI demands is because this thing is becoming um, a very handy tool for all kinds of people. And the token that it consumes is so much larger than previous modes. Like I ask a question to ChatGPT, it replies with me like thousands of words. That is very low consumption of token, but this one is high consumption. So let me give you just one story. So a couple days ago, Tencent has a um, like public activity has a booth outside of their office building and helps everybody to install OpenClaw on their computer for free. You know what happened that day is like so many people are in the queue waiting for the IT guys from Tencent to help them to install OpenClaw, and people are from middle school students, teenagers to 60-year-old guys and women. So that's a very big coverage of the people from the non-IT world. And I also encourage my colleagues to use that. So today I just came back from the office and I realized actually a few of my colleagues are already paying money to that to use OpenClaw, but they didn't choose the open version because it requires some IT knowledge to do that. So they pay the cloud vendors to run a small OpenClaw version, their own OpenClaw version on the cloud. So they pay a couple pounds a year to buy that service. It's not that large, but they told me that after the first day, they already spent £2 on the tokens for doing some little tasks. So this is going to be large. So I then asked him the question: if you spend £2 a day to let this open cloud to send you a agenda or help with your schedule meetings, you spend in total like £60 per month. And what does that compare to if you hire your own secretary, right? So that is a very big difference. That at least give me two feelings. One is that people are really using it, and it's not just covering people like us, IT guys, but also everybody from the society. And second part is that people are really getting paying for that.
I think that in some ways, I think if I think about psychologically what people are thinking, in some ways, this is like having a cleaner. Why do you have a cleaner? You can clean, anyone can clean, right? One of the reasons why you do it is to get a few hours back of your day. I would pay £2 to finish work an hour early because I don't have to schedule and respond about when I'm available. Half of my emails are, are you free at 3 p.m. on Thursday? So I think who wouldn't pay £2 to just for time? Time is the most precious resource. So why not do it? That's kind of how I think about it psychologically. What do you think?
I think also, on the other hand, if you think about our structure of economy, like for example, in the past, how can people form a company? You need to have a sales, you need to have a marketing, you need to have a guy who does all this office work and have a boss. But with this kind of assistant, you don't have to only deploy one, you can have several, right? You can have one sales, one marketing, one guy generates content. So it's really enables the emergence of one people company or few people company. So that is a very fundamental change to the economy, especially for such a like nowadays you can work in your own home and using a few of the assistants to make, for example, putting products on Amazon to sell, that is a totally new business model in my view.
So I think of it as if ChatGPT was the democratization moment of a generative AI, because generative AI didn't not exist before. It's just that suddenly it became accessible and it was free at first. And it's still free in many aspects. This is like the democratization moment for agentic AI, because agentic AI has existed. People are using it, but typically right now is the big corporations that use it for a specific project. It is not your average person able to download it. This enables the small entrepreneur to actually act like a Microsoft who is already using it, or act as a Amazon who's already using agentic AI. Manoj, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it definitely it's a very interesting technology. I think Jensen Huang called it the biggest technology disruption or something like that, right? It actually is like giving hands and legs to an LLM model to
Mm.
accomplish task. So definitely we will see this getting widespread adoption, various flavors of it getting integrated into various apps, use cases, and all sort of scenarios. But I think one of the biggest advantage of this OpenClaw is that you can actually host it on your own infrastructure. It could be your phone or it could be your own laptop. You can actually host the OpenAI, and that actually gives the privacy and all the security. And also, a lot of this data also resides in your own end user device or infrastructure. So, I think that is actually one of the biggest advantage for OpenClaw
So,
compared to
Manoj, can I
a
ask you a
Copilot
question
service.
related to demand? So,
Mhm.
if OpenClaw, you host it on your device, why would you ever host it on the cloud to have to pay for tokens?
That's like you need to have a device which is always on, which actually interact with the. So either you can buy a Mac Mini and like keep it on and working for you all the time, or you can replicate that in a cloud. So the people who don't have a Mac Mini or a desktop which is always on, they can run it on a cloud instance. So the cloud service providers will charge a small money for a virtual machine that you're consuming, which is running the OpenAI. Sorry,
So, your phone is always on. Why wouldn't you run it on your phone?
that actually kills the battery.
So let's talk about tokens. When you download OpenClaw on day one, you end up using it for one function, two function. Like any technology, over time, you start to learn. You have your own learning curve of how many things you can use it for. So then as a result, if on day one, you end up paying 100 tokens, and you have one or two use cases. On day 100, you might have 20 use cases because you've almost got addicted to the technology, using it to more and more things because you've through trial and error, you've seen that it works with this, it works with this, it works with this. And so then a person using OpenClaw on day one might generate a lot fewer tokens than a person using OpenClaw on day 100.
Yeah, I think that is actually the case with many of the apps, right? Once it becomes pretty common across platforms, across use cases, and across users, I think the demand really goes up. Similar to see, we all have some kind of an instant messaging tool. We all have some kind of an email client, and this will be as we go in the future. We'll have some kind of an agent who's orchestrating your task and like coordinating your responses across various platforms and stuff like that. And it could be open cloud based, like it's becoming like an operating system for the agentic AI world. So I think this is gaining a lot of traction among all kind of like developers. I think this is the project with the highest GitHub stars ever, and that all happened in a very short span of time. It actually points to the importance of this piece of software, and definitely it's actually the wider adoption of LLM.
So that survey that we ran that I just mentioned, it confirmed one thing that we've seen in the past, that people's biggest concerns, for example, with agentic AI, is the fact that they lack in-house expertise. And that's actually people's always biggest concern about new technology, that they will not understand it, that they don't know how to use it. If you think about what happened when you gave your grandma her first computer or her first phone, her biggest worry is like, I don't know how to use it. That is just the most natural thing. I think with OpenClaw, because it is comparatively easy to use, it kind of myth busts that agentic AI is so difficult that you need so much technical expertise in house. And that that accessibility has the potential to really accelerate adoption
Yeah,
of the
it's like the Uber app for taxi cabs, right? I'm not saying that this is exactly it is, but it actually makes it much more accessible.
Mm.
And that is exactly why we expect that there will be wider adoption of it across services, apps, enterprise users, etc. Yeah.
So investment drivers, obviously more adoption of AI and new use cases than extra, kind of creating extra demand. One of the things that I mentioned earlier is that, when I was at MWC, I did see a lot of new use cases and also quite a lot of ambition coming now from the broader ecosystem than just the hyperscalers. There was one cool use case of simultaneous translation that Deutsche Telekom want to launch in their network. I mean, these are features that we'll probably see across many apps anyway, but it was very cool. There was another very interesting use case of Huawei creating a model to help a robot inspect trains. I had seen AI be used to inspect trains in the US before with a very special high speed camera. Well, this was a very, very simple process of using robotic arms with cameras. But the fact is, it's now used at scale. And we were seeing European companies meet with Huawei when we were at MWC to try to adopt it. So it feels like there is a lot of progress in terms of adoption for predictive AI, the traditional AI, for generative AI, and also for agentic AI, and that it's broader. It's not just one or two companies. Let's talk about the risks. What is the first biggest risk? Middle East war.
War.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
It is actually a
So
big risk. There is significant challenges because of the war, not just on the global trade and commerce, but also on the semiconductor supply chain. So for building all these AI factories and large data centers, you need chips, and the chips are manufactured in Taiwan, Korea, and in US. I was reading an article and it said that 67% of the helium gas which is used by the semiconductor fabrication companies in Korea came from Qatar last year, and I think that production facility is completely shut down in Qatar. So we'll have to see what kind of implication it'll have. And there are a lot of like specialty chemicals which is used in the manufacturing process comes from these countries or through the narrow strait which is there, yeah, the Strait of Hormuz. And I think any risk in that area is definitely a challenge. It will create challenges to the supply chain. And if you look at it, the semiconductor manufacturing is already a big bottleneck. We don't have enough DRAMs, we don't have enough NVMe drives, basically the flash memory for storage, and also there is even now CPU and GPU shortages, right? So if these sensitive components like the helium gas or other specialty chemicals, the supply chain of those things are chalked, it is going to impact the semiconductor manufacturing, and that will also create a big challenge for the data center expansion plans as well. So I think that is a major risk.
So to me, and just before I pass on to Shane, I think that I'm concerned about the projects in the Middle East themselves. There's so many projects, and that was such an active region. When I went to
Yeah.
Vertiv's factory last year, I've never seen more fan walls ever be prepared to be shipped out anywhere. So it feels like a real shame that I'm guessing these projects are going to be on pause because you can't work in the conditions that are there currently. So I am nervous about that. And I'm also very nervous about actually the impact on the broader power grid because in so many places people import gas. 30% of the global power grid runs on gas. Um, it's not just about the price, it's also about the potential shortages and then what happens when there are shortages and what happens when some of the utility providers cannot commit the fulfillments that they've made because there's just no natural gas. So I would say that these are the two things that, I keep worrying when I read the news. Shen?
Yeah, apart from just to add, apart from the threat to the semiconductor supply chain and also the energy shortage, that is also likely be a big scenario because all of the data centers that we are talking about are planning to run gas turbines and generate energy behind the meter. All of those projects will be impacted because of either the increasing gas prices or the absolute lack of availability of gas, which is imported from this part of the world. And there is also another important, I would say, geopolitical slash economic challenge. There was actually news that some of the Middle East sovereign wealth funds and also governments will rethink about their investment plans. And the Middle East region, that is including Saudi Arabia, UAE, etc., are a big provider of funding. Generator means they put a lot of money they generate from gas and oil in the US stock market, US companies for their expansion plans and also for their capital investments. And I think that funding, whether it will continue, is there any challenge for that kind of funding, whether we'll see the same intensity of those fundings going forward? That is also another challenge. Even some of the companies, large companies, are free cash flow negative, right? They have negative free cash flow this year because they are putting money and they have to raise debt or raise other means of like funding. And where does this funding come from? So the cost of financing will go up and it'll also have an implication on the capex plans of these companies.
Shen, anything to add? Anything that we've missed on the impact of the Middle East war?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest take I'm thinking is that it's actually the first time that in the war, data center become the target. In the past, the missiles will actually attack the military bases or weapon factories, for example. But nowadays, data center becomes the high value core of targets, and they realize that if you attack a data center and maybe give you some like they tell you, oh, this data center is mainly used for military purposes, so that's why they attack it. That means in the future, any data center constructions in the potentially war high risk zone will be reconsidered, and that consequently, for example, the insurance fees for those kind of data centers will be increasing very much, and also the service contracts for those data centers will be more expensive, and especially nowadays in Middle East. For example, I know that a lot of vendors are selling devices to Middle East, and they are sending engineering teams there. They're sending sales there, and actually those people are now having difficulties either going there or coming back. So this is a very fundamental risk. For example, in the future, if you want to set up a data center in the Middle East near Iran or near Iraq, you have to think twice. That's the biggest concern.
I think that really is the big problem. Let's end on a more positive note, just because this is, obviously we're very worried about also our colleagues in the region. So let's just try to shift gears. One of the questions about risks that people have brought to my attention over the last few years has always been the power availability, which makes total sense. And Manoj kind of touched upon it a second ago that data center operators are generating their own power. But then, when we bring this up, people would challenge us. Vlad, there's not enough gas turbines, there's not enough gas engines. So even if you wanted to generate your own power, you couldn't. But then Manoj ended up seeing something interesting happen in his city and in India related to gas turbines.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. So about like 5 kilometers away from my home, there was a power plant, which was from a company called Bombay Suburban Electric Power Company, and that power plant had stopped operation at least about 8-9 years ago because it was supposed to be a power plant consuming natural gas, and GE had provided the turbines for the power plant. It operated for some 8 or 9 years, and after that it became unviable because of the very high gas prices, and it was sitting idle ever since, and nobody used it. No, it was not working. There was no natural gas supply to that plant, and it was just sitting idle and rusting. Last year, the same consultant who helped to erect that plant contacted the company, and he said that if there is no use, I will take back the turbine, and they shipped the turbine from India to US, and I guess that it might be operational somewhere powering an AI data center.
But the long story short is buying new turbine is not your only access to turbine. You can buy an older turbine and refurbish it. And it seems like companies are
Exactly.
starting to offer that service.
Exactly. I think the demand for turbines are crazy, right? And from the leading suppliers, there is no availability maybe until 2029, 2030. It's all their capacity is booked. So there are turbines sitting idle across the globe in multiple places, and people are actually taking it and deploying it for data centers or for power generation, where the priority is to generate behind the meter power using natural gas. So it's quite interesting.
It's very interesting. Thank you guys for joining us today. Please send us any feedback. any questions, if there's any topic that you want us to discuss next, we would be happy to consider it. With this is the end of the AIDC debate, and we will see you soon.